everyone. I've noticed that a lot of my viewers, maybe the vast majority, are really into Vangelis and also really into keyboards, which are two of my favorite subjects. So I thought I'd try putting out a video for that audience. If you're not that into Vangelis or you're not that into keyboards, then you probably won't want to watch this. But if those are things that you like a lot, like I do, you might find this kind of interesting. I want to make a video talking about some of the keyboard sounds that Vangelis used on his track Rachel's Song from the Blade Runner soundtrack, which was the last cover that I did, and talk about some of the sounds that he used and then my attempts to try to imitate some of those sounds or recreate them with more modern equipment. So the CS80, the Yamaha CS80, is probably one of the first keyboards that comes to mind when we think of Vangelis. And I had some viewers recommend that I get this instrument here, a Hydrasynth, the ASM Hydrasynth. I first heard of from a viewer and then another viewer, and they talked in a very excited way about it. So what does this instrument have going for it? Well, it has polyphonic aftertouch. It has a ribbon controller. It also has more than one filter, which you can configure to be a high pass or low pass. And so these are some characteristics of the Yamaha CS80 that I don't find on a lot of other instruments, especially having a ribbon controller that is above the keyboard like this. My Montage has a little ribbon controller, but it's not very helpful for doing the kinds of things that you want to do, where you hit a note and then sort of drop it down in a nice musical way, the way Vangelis did a lot on various songs. So yeah, here I got one, partly because some of you recommended it, and I'm still learning it. I am not sure if I love it yet. There's things about it that I love a lot. The ribbon controller I used in Rachel's Song, which is very nice to have that as an option. Now, compared to a Yamaha CS80 or the keyboard that inspired it, the Yamaha GX1, this ribbon controller doesn't feel as nice. So those instruments have a very luxurious, velvety, inviting ribbon controller where you can it just glides on there. This is plastic, and if you're moving your finger up and down there a lot, you may even get like a brush burn on there. It's not super comfortable, but it's great to have as an option. And if you have this instrument, I'll give you a little tip here. When I first played a Yamaha CS80, I played a note and I tried to drop it in that nice way, and it didn't sound as musical as Vangelis did. It didn't have the nice drop in volume. And so I assume that he probably was using a volume pedal when he would do that to cut back on the volume as the note descended, as the pitch descended. So I used the modulation matrix. I pointed the ribbon controller at the amplifier, and I did this with a couple slots, 3 slots, to get to the point where you can drop it and it will fade out. Which is, you know, what I was going for. Which has a nice fade out and is a lot more musical than if it maintains the pitch. What else? It has the polyphonic aftertouch. So if you have a sound on most instruments, even high-priced keyboards don't tend to have polyphonic aftertouch. Most of my instruments don't, although many do take MIDI polyphonic aftertouch information. So for example, I could control my Prophet Rev2 module or the keyboard from this instrument, and I now have polyphonic aftertouch on the Rev2, which is quite nice because this is an analog instrument, this is digital, which is probably the main criticism of this, is that it's digital and maybe not as warm. But what you can do with it then is modulate one note at a time, which is much more musical. So we could play. Notice that it's not modulating all the notes. If you do that on another instrument, it's going to modulate everything. So you could play even a chord and then sort of emphasize a certain note and keep all the keys down. And you could use Aftertouch to, I'm using it there to add a little volume, a little vibrato, and opening up the filter a lot, which is some of the things that Vangelis would do to emphasize a note. I use it in a kind of a subtle way. I tend not to put as much opening of the filter. Just a little bit, and it gives you a little more ability to express yourself and control it in a more pleasing way. So I love that about the instrument. And then there are these different programmable filters. So the first sound that I use on that cover, it has, I'm not exactly sure what instrument that was on the original. It might have been the CS80, might have been the Prophet 5 or something else. I used a 24 decibel 4-pole filter for that sound. And it's a very nice, pleasing, analog-ish sound. It does sound a little better. My version of it over here sounds a little better, but it's got those nice features that you don't have over here. I use then on the second sound a different filter, a gated filter. Nice to have the option, a little brighter sounding filter. And then on the third lead, these were all original patches that I made. This is my take on the Yamaha CS80 flute. By the way, after I made that sound, I noticed that they actually have a preset called CS80 flute, and it's not that different from mine. It has more resonance. I like mine a little better, of course, but they do have a lot of CS80 patches that they attempted to program into this. They obviously were going for people like me who'd like to have a CS80 but can't afford one, can't source one. They've gotten so rare and so expensive that they're not very, it'd be hard to justify buying one for someone like me. So yeah, that's the CS80 sounds. Of course, in the original, there's a lot more Fender Rhodes. So Vangelis used a Fender Rhodes piano to blend a lot of things together. It's a very warm sound for most of it. Very warm, and then I hear a lot more of the hammers on the solo part. So I reach over with 2 fingers, turn that sound off, and turn on another Fender Rhodes. It has more of a, you can hear the hammers a bit more. And then switch back to the other Rhodes. There's a bass down here. This is an example of there was a set of sounds that came, I think, for free on the Yamaha Montage that you could download that were attempting to give you some of the Yamaha CS80 sounds. And I was very excited to download these. And frankly, I didn't like most of them. And this is the only one I've used. I used this on a couple of my covers. The Yamaha CS80 bass I like a lot. I don't know if the bass in the original was CS80 or Mini Moog. The bass that I use over here is one of my favorite patches that I've done for the Mini Moog, and then I gave it a lot of release To me, the way to cover a mini Moog on a Prophet is to layer the sound so that you can use 3 oscillators. So most mini Moog bass sounds have 3 oscillators, and then you want to use the distortion effect to give it some of that grit. That the distortion gives it some of that mini Moog overdrive. So I use the bass there sometimes, bass over here sometimes. Also here we have acoustic piano. Again, 2 fingers to turn off the Fender piano, turn on the acoustic piano. And then 2 fingers back to turn on the Rhodes again at the end. Also down here I'm using the choir, so there's a it's a slightly modified boys choir I'm using here in combination with the string sound over here. The strings that I use, I talk a lot about in I did another video talking about the sounds I used on the Blade Runner End Titles cover. If you watch my cover of that at the end, there's another video where I talk about sounds. And again, if you're into this kind of stuff, you might want to watch that. Also, if you're really into this kind of thing, consider commenting or giving it a thumbs up, because probably a lot of people give it a thumbs down. And if you like this kind of content, you know, let me know, because I like talking about this stuff. And we can't talk about these things in the real world very much with people, so it's kind of fun to do it here. So the choir then, blended with the strings, you can get which is kind of nice. Again, the strings, how I program those, I talk about a lot more in that other video you can check out. So yeah, that's kind of it. Oh, I liked how you, in a split here, I'm using this Prophet to control this one, so I have them split, but also layered, and then they're panned left and right. I can get some bass notes here, and also some string sounds here, so you can get kind of that nice turn the choir off, sort of that. Which is kind of nice. Again, hope you like that. If you're into keyboard sounds, maybe comment below. And if you know some things about these instruments that you can contribute, let me know, because I'm always eager to learn some more stuff about this. Thanks for watching.